avancé.
Ngit si kashiji labu kumsala. Mamumi. No. Rinpoche, Sigi Rinpoche, Lobsang Wangdu is with us again, going to be teaching Rinpoche Lama Tsongkhapa's in praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. And so without further ado, we will begin with the Sangit Chodang prayer, which will be coming up on the screen. Thanks, Michael. And then we're going to be doing the mandala offering. So this time we're going to be doing the long mandala offering. And in future evenings, we won't be doing the long one. And then we'll get on with the teaching. Okay. Sangye Chodang Soye Chonam La Chancho Patu Tani Kya Suchi Dagi Chunyingi Pesonangi Drola Penji Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chodang Soye Chonam La Chancho Patu Tani Kya Suchi Dagi Chunyingi Pesonangi Drola Penji Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chodang Soye Chonam La Chancho Patu Tani Kya Suchi Dagi Chunyingi Pesonangi Drola Penji Sangye Drupa Sho Jingang Jo Amen Zabu Me Ahu Wan Jen Sege Saji Amen Zari Ke Ahu Ji Jari Koyuki Kowe Usu Ri Gyabo Ri Rap Sha Lu Papo Lo Zambo Lin No Balanju Chan Raminin Lu Dan Lu Pa Ngayam Dan Ngayam Shin Yo Den Dan Lan Jo To Raminin Dan Raminin Gita Rinpoche Ryo Amba Zangi Shin De Ju Ba Mamu Paye Loto Kolo Rinpoche Nopo Rinpoche Semu Rinpoche Lambo Rinpoche Lambo Rinpoche Tacho Rinpoche Aben Rinpoche Tejembe Bomba Kiamo Tranwama Leama Garama Medoma Dubema Nazema Dijama Nyema Dawa Rinpoche Do Jole Namba Yawe Gazen Usulatame Bajo Punzun Sopa Ma Sanwa Meba Sanjin Yidu Wangwa Dida Tinjin Zawa Tanyu Jebe Badan Lama Tamba Namdan Geba Duyang. You have to go up a bit, Michael. Sorry. Up. Up. There, that's it. The one that you had before. Below. It's below that. That's it. Gyaba Duya Yonzo Tembe Ngada Dungi Letu Tsene Mute Jezun Lama Lozan Towan Toche Chan Jambo Gauji Kirimbo Jezun Lozan Wangdu Bazambu Shengane Dabai Jembe Zungje Zamo Laba Jue Yando Shingan Wagyo Dozen Roe Dandu Jesus Shene Yandazo Roa Magyo Nange Tata Nyambe Senjen Tamjela Tuze Wa Jembe Kone Next one, yeah, okay, thanks. Can we have Jessica on the screen, please? I think she's got the her screen camera pointed towards the mandala offering. If it's difficult, we can just carry on.
참모는 뜻이들이 나지난도 본다인도 공도들이 쉬워.
You're not the microphone, Yubela. So first of all, anyway, that's delay to everybody, greetings, and where you are probably it's going to be evening, so good evening, everybody. Also, you need a microphone unit is down to this. Say it right.
This one.
No, no.
Then you give us control several coguina, kiran several coguna, as a degree some.
No, the also budu. In the several majuna ngede shundig.
Microphone strategy, then around William Atterson.
No, they're just getting a microphone so that the Rinpoche's voice is a bit.
Hello.
No.
Sevde.
Oh, it's Yabudula.
Oh, that 단위의 마고 쪽인다 봐.
So let's start.
드링 아주 마셔야지 텐드도 봐라 봐. 장고라 마 종가부 준비 제베 텐드도 봐대. 마셔야도 있어 봐.
What I'm going to be teaching is a text composed by the great master Lama Tsongkhapa, and the name of the text is the dependent arising or dependent origination prayer, praise. No.
다디 도마 쉬어 갈라. 네. 다징아조 산제 치토마레 숨tem바레. 당아조 추체니 가디 제바 예나야. 안 도마라 굴루 죄야다. 다도조 개치무시다레. 드링아조 데시아데 낭베 추게 니 버게 체니 치기요레 디인도 삼바 삼료톤에 니 도마라 군조스나 접수도 감로 심바치 고야데 개치무레스.
First thing I would like to talk about is our motivation for the teaching, having the right attitude for receiving the teaching, likewise for explaining this text. We all need to have a good, pure attitude. So we've just been reciting the Sangye Chodang prayer right at the very beginning, which is a prayer about going for refuge and generating bodhicitta. So the teaching that we're going to be listening to is a Buddhist teaching, so it's only fitting that the motivation, part of our motivation would be to have the mind of, or the attitude of refuge in the three rare and sublime ones, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. No.
How do you enter share? ngalanzu chenyeje chöde 태화 준비추 자대거리 태화 준비추 그게 chenyeje 갑라 아니 깜주 심바제 디간라 아니 다 간다 타이베 심제 탐제의 제도 펜디주베 제도 아니 다 간다 고노 쯤상부터 되지데 제베토네 아니 당한주 신이 예시 지구의 선배 선바치 종바이나 태화 준비추에서 들어왔다 된다 거로.
And then in particular, this is a teaching of the Mahayana. And so for that reason, whether we're teaching or whether we're listening to the teaching, our motivation, or let's say this activity of listening and teaching needs to be imbued with the wish, the strong wish to be of benefit to the infinite other sentient beings. So we need to think, that's why I'm listening to this teaching. That's why I'm explaining this text. No.
아니 최상의 가르치이나 양 아니 조 삼바 상을라라려바 인도 삼바 아니 그게 삼바 삼보 전주 심 생이바지 매나야 전주 심 다 쥐마다고 지금 이 그게 세답지 아니 단 얘기 취 년바당 취생에 있는 취년에 있는 수도선의 간체바디 심지어 탐절 편바지 존나 지마로 삼배 삼배 심바지 고야데 개체물이스.
And so in general, whatever, for what we're doing to be good or bad, what makes it something good or bad, it depends completely on your attitude. If you have a good attitude, then what you're doing becomes something good. When you have a bad attitude, then it becomes something bad. And so with that in mind, then try to think that even if you don't actually have real bodhicitta, even if it's in a sense a sort of not exactly contrived, but anyway, not the actual fully fledged bodhicitta, but just you're trying to generate that attitude of bodhicitta, the awakening mind. Even at that level, we must try to at least have that kind of attitude, thinking that what I'm doing is aimed at being helpful to as many sentient beings as possible, thinking how wonderful it would be if through this I could be of real help to all sentient beings. No.
디인자다 아주 다들마치는 준다지 소선 나와 소선나 준다 소수 나라에 맞아 되기 아니 다된데 신이 제가 걸라 산지 쳐도만 되게 되게 걸라 아니 그랑도 semla 최소적이 아니 봐 가서 그래 군조선도 접수도 잠도 잠도 심바당 디톤에 아니 예 주친이 제바데 아니 다 간다 잠물린 게 심지어 탐지 팬도에 제도 아니 다 제대 예시 지구에서 군로들이 심벽권 eng아도 디체바이나 최최수 좋아다 어디들을 팬도인 거로 어디 제메가서 eng아도 다 주든 제메가 간대지네야 디가서 니 양조시에 먹어가지 이렇게라도 군로 먼저 산제 주도마 살숨 되베깔 아니 군로 잠도다 심지게 심바치야디 아니 심랑 예바치로지스.
And so each time that we meet, as we go through this text, we'll do the same thing in the sense that we'll start off with reciting that prayer about going for refuge and generating bodhicitta. We'll recite it 3 times. And at that time, I won't explain in future. You'll simply need to remind yourself as you're reciting those words about going for refuge and about generating bodhicitta. In other words, take that opportunity to make sure that your mind is infused with the attitude of going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and also the attitude where you want to be of service to, of benefit to all sentient beings, everybody in this world, absolutely everybody. And so, as I said, in future, I won't explain this. So please just try to get that clear in your minds. That's what you'll be doing on the future occasions as well. No.
가서 다 드리기 주자 덴저도바티 덴저도바 제르모치 덴저도바 그게 도바 제베 준제 잡았다 제주 컨트리입니다. 다 디게 된마 롭지 쉬워이나 좋아.
Yes. Now, what I wanted to start off with before actually, going into the text was a little bit of talk about why it was that Gyümé, which means Lama Tsongkhapa, why Gyümé composed this dependent arising praise. No.
다 Gyümé 코라 토마라 다 구슈네 되네야 제네야 동아지 슝망볼라 인터바자 첨부제 당보제제 터바망도제 송만나시 봐 동아지 슝나 롬니 슈침부제 터바망고제 인터바제니 디지스 인터베 되되자 아니 간다라 삼중 거네 아니 베게 가서 공부하잖아요 봐 파도 슝로 탐제 담바샤르 송만나시 아니 강 터바제베 터베 되되제들 냠레나 봐 냠레스는 거기 삼중기 아니 제바 디데랑 데네 제바 남베 제라 아니 타마 아니 따동아지 슝디 템바디제 탐제라 아니 인생마바 아니 냠스나제 디스나요리스.
In the beginning, prior to composing this text, Gyümé Lama Tsongkhapa was already very learned in the sutra teachings and the Vajrayana teachings. He'd listened to lots and lots of teachings, and then he had reflected on the meaning of those teachings, engaged in analysis, investigation, and then having come to an understanding through that process, then day and night he put those teachings into practice. No.
And 다 간다라 타만 인제 군도 냥솔 라니 봐 냠뇨게 그게 내심벽권에 냠뇨게 내심벽권에 아니 내 엠바템바 봐 내 엠바템에 아니 두번냠네 제 두번냠네 제 도스나바리 두번냠네 제네 아니 그게 따조 가르소래 다 그게 고물로 주지 숑리 대가는 10반된 다와리 상로에 상계자를 디게게 숑리 송바 디게 차 숑든 디게 tel 아니 냠네 티침바 나니 사모 오메타와 토로 총바데 총바리스
And then having got that kind of deep understanding of the teachings, he went off to an isolated place. So he already had some experience, and now to deepen that experience, he went off to an isolated place to engage in even deeper practice. And through that, he was able to gain a firm, clear understanding of the profound view of the middle way, view of emptiness, realizing emptiness, as explained in the treatises of Nagarjuna, Chandakirti, Buddhapalata, and so forth. No.
디게디 쇼네 송반는 시기다 냠레나니 우메타와 줄라게 우메타와 줄라게네 아니 좀 좀되었다 니베 가소래 미시베 투 대바템버지 니제 좀베 거딘텐 아니 미시베 대바 침부지 안 대바데 찬데 아니 가소래 좀발이야 아니 대바제바 어떻든지
And so he practiced what's explained in those texts, and through his practice, he was able to get that insight into the middle way view. And once he had that, then he had this very deep, very strong sense of faith in the Buddha and a deep appreciation of the Buddha's kindness. And out of that kind of faith and appreciation, within that, he composed this text. No.
That 기자 도전님부디 단예 기자 가르치기 위해서는 가다 제일 뭐지 코란기 다 통마 놈니 수신의 잡는 바로 놈니 수신의 잡에게 아니 되베 되더라 아니 삼중기 원에 아니 제조 송지 제공단 조금 송지지 권에 냠내제네 아니 그게 사모 오메타와 투줄을 총바텔라 때네 아니 또 맞춤 되달이야 대바 도도메베 대바지 제네 대바티 찬에 되베 온보 두바 되베 온보라 아니 되자제베 숑디리 시작을 왔다.
To summarize what I've been saying, first of all, Gyümé studied widely. Then he, in the middle, as they say, in the middle, he engaged in analysis of the meaning of what he'd learned, which means that he practiced alternating checking meditation and concentration meditation. And through this, he was able to gain an insight into the view of the middle way. And when he had that, then he had this sort of like irreversible faith in the Buddha, and out of that faith, he composed this text. No.
어떠세요? 다 되네. 다 tindeege 제를 못 치게 다 가서게 네 남다르스는 디 도도ችን 마치 쉬어버리. 이네 키란도 디토라 14회권에 제를 못 치게 롬니 칸데자 요메 꿀레 그게 소사 집장 칸데 나 요메 꿀레 가서 요메 디게디 14회권에 키란도 신도 요나 데리가서 단다 겨울에 뭐지 개주 기시 두된 진박이 아니 티셔베 그 제르마치 남다죠 인지도를 요리 닌줄로바에는 키란조 제르마치게 이니 남다되게 세보 키란조 신토야 펜도 요거리스.
So what I've done here is given a very, very brief description of Gyümé Lama Tsongkhapa's life, very, very brief. And if you have an interest in gaining a more detailed insight, understanding into the way that he studied, how he purified, how he accumulated merit, his hardships, the hardships he went through in his life, then there is a book available in English composed by His Holiness's translator, Tutin Jimpa. So if you read that, then that will really help you to understand about Gyümé Lama Tsongkhapa. No.
What is it? That the near the tapage tended to about Jeremuchi, tended to about Zayag, Jumsen Davati, Rosa to show yes.
So what I've just done is I've explained in a sort of rough way the reason for Lama Tsongkhapa to compose this text.
That didn't want to Mushima tended to Bama go to Mashuya ye, and the Chidan tended to Java Mangoshita Yori, Java Mangoshita Yori, any Tandango to Mashiadi, so that's it Rangitone, tended to be 30 Rangitone Matus Jene, Mashuya to see Isra.
No. Now I'm going to get down to the actual text, and there are many commentaries to this text, but what I'm going to be doing is mainly focusing on the root verses of the text itself. No.
Pena tended to Dilaya, say she, what the Ming Leshin you Chuan, Sigri, Leshin you Chuan to do, tended to Valasungor, Namjuli, Tangaleshin you Jevadi, Shuguta, Mangotowa, and Leshin you Chuas, tended to Valeshin you Chuas, or just sugar.
Generally speaking, the name that's given to this text is the let's say the little or the small essence of good explanations. So there is another essence of good explanations which is much longer than this. So this is the short version. That's how it's usually referred to. That's how we usually refer to it. No.
No, this you were. That here, and it's so that Dumbalaya, Tusha Zetandi, Dumbala, Lesinim Tanda, tended to Digos, Dumbala, Duba, the charts of Sedante, and Dumba Jimdi, the Kira, and Tending I will go in Dumba Shandaman, Davachi, Restin, and Duba Tegor, sort of
it. The main way in which the main way in which Gyümé praises the Buddha and offers homage to the Buddha is for his having taught about dependent origination. No.
Or to say that the incident Tatamodilla, tended to go Gotela, any Namoguru Mazokogayas, the Jiore. Namoguru Mazokoga. The that somebody that gave Tony Jaban, Charter, Lama Jaban, Charter, Rosa, couldn't
So you will see right at the top of the page, just before verse 1, it says Namo Guru Manjuko Kaya or Manjuko Shaya. So this is Sanskrit, and what it means is homage to the Lama, the Guru, Manjushri, Manjukosha, and Jambaliang in Tibetan. Manjukosha, Manjushri. That means Manjushri.
That the Tanda Digo Gotela, Lama Jambel, Chatselo Sagi, Jerumochi, Sit in the Sunya Della, Jumsejor, Jumsejor. Dicarisna, 디 지단 잠배야 마이베 다 하달라마 마보요 때 뒤에는 미세 잠배야 차차로 송과야 준제 가리스나 텐주 되게 제자데 라바숨디나네 시럽게 라바 주제 조 지금 요바 인소자네 엔티 자네 잠배야 차차 와스.
Yes. Now there's a reason why Gyümé pays homage right at the beginning to Gyümé. So like actually literally would be Manjushri Kocha. Anyway, why he offers homage to Manjushri, the reason is that the topic that's being dealt with here is wisdom, and of the three higher trainings, therefore it belongs to the higher training in wisdom. So it's because of that that this praise is made to Manjushri. No.
제자디 시럽 gelaba 제자 지기 요바인서 전에 시럽지 투무 많이 베게 다 하스네미도 디 지지자매 차대어 디 전에 아니 라마 자매 차셀로스 보게 자매 차서고 준제 어때래.
No. And further, when so the topic is wisdom, and the special deity, the unique special deity for wisdom is Manjushri. So in that way you can see the connection. No.
딘데체레 딘안에 나랑조 다다 딘데데베 딘주디 엔 데니 숨긴나네 원베 데니바 셰아치도 데니 숨기는 지당 산제제 까텐주 탐제 소드나 데니숨나나 뒤쪽으로와 데니숨나네 단다 고달라 자베라 차체로 송발라 데니 야 덴주디 데니숨게나네 원베 데니 레샤선베 인포게 남상게 셰 예반이야 치도 오두스레.
Somebody needs muting, maybe. Okay, thank you. There's another reason, which is that all of the Buddha's own teachings and all of the treatises, the treatises that explain those teachings, they can all be summarized into three groups of teachings, which are called the Tripitaka, or the three baskets of the Buddha's teachings. So one of those is called the Abhidhamma Pitaka, the basket of teachings of knowledge. And so having this homage to Manjushri means, from that we can know, oh, this teaching belongs to the Abhidhamma Pitaka, the Abhidhamma basket of teachings. No.
And 대관난시 따지단 데니 숨 소소고 고라야 아니 쳐봐 주단 될라 때네 맨나 탐지 겸발라 차텔로서야 되게 식지요나 안 디조 데니 숨고나네 되게 데니 봐 남상 워트야 봐 대관난시 고들라 산제의 제주선바 탐지를 차텔로서야 되게 주요나 뒤지지요나 디게 인텐주 데니 숨고나네 도대 되는 봐 남상 워트야 같이도 배정 거리 말로 인들 디 데니 숨고나네 도대 되는이샤 띵원베 되는이샤 디 두에 되는이샤 남상 그게 워트야 같이도 미세게 된듯이 되나요레스.
No. So you see, the idea is that right at the beginning, you know which of the three pitakas, the three baskets of the Buddha's teachings, a given commentary belongs to. So if right at the beginning there is homage to the omniscient one, then you know that that text, that teaching belongs to the Vinaya Pitaka, the teachings on discipline. And then if it says homage to all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then you know it belongs to the Sutra Pitaka. No.
No. 어두스들이 다 디안 좀 가르에서나 말 표기 제보된 주제와 표기 제보 주제 손자가 몰라서 봐 대다기 아니 자가게 깨네 표기도 주 망부 땡주 망부시 주요 그랬습니다. 봐. 자가 섬지다 깨네 표기도 땡주 망부 주 주요 qabla 아니 뭐게 잡아도 팀스네. 아니 땡주 강다 강 주로와 이나야 디 주요 qabla야 아니 주샤스그리 주에 주샤가 찍들라 아니 잠배야나 차절로 써야다. 봐. 원배되네나 뇌되네나 탐제 점발로 차절로 써야다. 너디 되네나 산제도 지지 좀 같은 게 차절로 써야 진짜 팀 쓰지. 팀 써발라 팀 쓰네. 아니 로자와 수수 땡주 강다 강 줄과 이는 줄 차이에 제라 땡주도 로인데 삼아 람상 데네스무 가리인 바데 워터야. 저자라바 숨게는 가르치기 바데 워터야. 어떤 데게 쳐도 아니 팀 쓰지. 엔치 디 팀디다 팀벌 아니 제르무지게야 도마라 리신님 총아스네면도 때때가 제가 qabla 아니 제발라 차텔로스 다 주샤도 팀바다고 직전에 팀기 제바데다 팀바다고 전에 차타 어두스래.
So you see, the main thing is that earlier Dharma kings of Tibet, such as Songtsen Gampo and so forth, so they were under their rule. Many treatises were translated into Tibetan, and so they made the rule that whatever treatise it was that was translated, then the translator should put this homage at the beginning. So it's usually referred to as the translator's homage. So it's actually written there by the translator, and through that, and in fact that was the whole reason, you know, that through that then you would know of the three baskets of the Buddha's teachings, three groups of the Buddha's teachings, which one this one belonged to, and then you would also know what the main topic of that was. So again, you know, if it says the homage to Manjushri, you know, it's the Abhidhamma Pitaka. And then if it's the homage to the omniscient one, then it's the the Vinaya Pitaka. And if it's the homages to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then it's the Sutra Pitaka. No. And so, and so for when Lama Tsongkhapa begins his text with this you know, homage to Manjushri, is to somehow to conform in a sense with that rule. No.
to say that the Tamon Namu Guru Lama Jambana Chat Losa teacher. That DJ Kanshi Sishi Sumbai, Kenda Domba Lanami, Gawa Tenji, Javaju Sishi Domba Tela Dus, that the Sichik Mashu is.
No. Now I'm going to start talking about the first verse. So let's read that out. He who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, O conqueror, you who saw dependent origination and taught it. No.
That did CJ Digi, Karasozon, Jeremoji, Tenju Zombe, Tomala, Yu Chabachela, Yu Chabachela, Choba Jobata, any Shungi Lunamsha Sinemido, that Shungi Jeja Dortember, that is.
In this first verse, what you have is Gyümé Lama Tsongkhapa's own expression of worship to a special, you know, to a special object or some special object or being, and besides that, it contains the meaning of this teaching in a very summarized form in that one verse. No.
That's a time of the Kanshi, 60 Sumba in Sidusama, and turn Kanshi, any Chinji Maloba, Sigba, turn Kanshi Chinji Maloba, Situna, because a Sigbati, Kambalana Mabache, Kanshi 60. Any Kan Sigbati, turn Chinji Maloba, Tumba in Tumbalana Maba. 60 Sumba, and Kenda Tumbalana, Kambalana Mabada, Tumbalana Mabas, this one.
No. And then you can see it says, makes you a knower and teacher unexcelled. So we're looking at those first two lines. So it says, he who speaks on the basis of seeing. So makes him a knower. So that's the showing that the Buddha is a peerless knower, talking about his peerless knowledge. What's his peerless knowledge? His faultless knowledge is faultlessly understanding, perfectly understanding about dependent arising that's mentioned later in the verse. And then because of teaching that faultlessly, then that makes him a peerless teacher. So peerless knower because of knowing that, peerless teacher because of teaching that on the basis of that knowledge. No. Sorry, I've been saying peerless, it's just habit. So it's exactly the same. The way it's translated here is unexcelled. No.
That Tanda Davadi, Tombachim de Tombata, Tenjugi, Namshati, Rangi Chiji Maloba, Siwache, Rangi Chiji Maloba, Siwan Nanshi, and Page Shela and Chidawashi, Chiji Maloba, Tomba Inza, and Tombalana Mebatang, and Kembalana Mebas, Rangi Chishin, Siwa Inza, Kembalana Meba. Tomba the Tenjugi, Namshati Gedi. Chidawashin, Chinji Malova, Namjonga Nunchusan Meba, Chinji Malova, Chembainza, Chembalana Mebaris, and Korangi Chembalanshi, and Dujashalaya, and Bagay Chidawashin in the middle, Chinji Malova, Tomba Zavainza, Tombalana Mebaris, what is it?
Yes. What this means is that our teacher, the Buddha, saw the meaning of emptiness and dependent arising perfectly, like without any error, without any mistake. And so that makes him the unexcelled knower. And then what he knew, he also taught unmistakenly, and that makes him an unexcelled teacher. No.
Chinda Tombal, Gawa Tinji Javachu Sishi Tomba Telasus, Gawa Sidu Samba, Chidan Gawas at 60 Tundadi, any Nemo the Shija Diba, Niga Pamba Yisutani, Gawasigo, Diva Tamja Pambechani, Gawache. Rua Tende Gawa Tomba Jumde de Digi, any Tenji Javachu and Namsha Ti, Rangi Chidawa Shindu Sishi, and Shella Domba Java is the Tinde Domba Zing, Dombatella, and Chata Kubetuba is what is the word.
So yeah, then we go on to the next two lines. Is that I bow to you, O conqueror, you who saw dependent origination and taught it. So what this means is when it says, O conqueror there, Gyawa. So this refers to the quality of having completely abandoned, completely got rid of the two obscurations. The two obscurations being the obscuration, the afflictive obscurations and the knowledge obscurations. And so what Gyümé is saying in these two lines is, so you, that the conqueror with that understanding, you saw dependent arising and then instructed others in what you understood. And so to you, I pay homage, or in other words, I bow down with respect. No.
Or those Jenny, Sigan Tambodi, Dombala, and Chatava. That did see the Tanda Sev Chayuna, Conju Bena, Tayang Junior, Pandordun Lavaina. Conscious Sishi Sumbai, Chenda Tombalana Mr. And Tenju to Chidawashin to Sishi, Shella Chidawashin to Sungi, any Tombalana Meba, Tetang, Chembalana Meba, the Tombalana Meba, and Tea any Tende Tombalana Meba, Divinely gave Java, Tombachum de Nova. Any Java Tigi, Dijala, any Dutella, Tene, Devote Chuan is Tendig and Namshaka, Gone, Jawa tenji trabajo. Tate tene trobata, tene juwe namshadi sungbe kun, sungen in tombatela, ungusung kuba chimbe kun, in chatawam dubai, yinsta tondatiri. Sishin tombatela do said.
Okay, to roughly go through that again to make sure you understand. What this says is the Buddha saw dependent arising precisely and is therefore an unexcelled knower. And then based on that personal knowledge, then he also taught it exactly without mistake. And that's why he's an unexcelled teacher. So to that one who is the conqueror, having abandoned the two obscurations and who taught dependent arising, to you I bow down. No.
我的的东巴了恰这个这个样的，这里呀，绿南下呀，是个绿南下是那谁恰送啊
No. So you see, in this one verse, you have an expression of worship to the Buddha, and at the same time, you have a summarized explanation of the main body of the teaching. No.
但是呢，从研究可能个学家的刚刚谈到这地那了呀，学家多对劲的，学家个把人个这话的就多对的点把人家绿南下是个话。
绿南是这里的茶商的吧？茶商。
绿南下是就什么？研究东西个学家讲了吧？么个书里写个学家讲了吧？么个学家个把人个这话的就刚刚谈到第一个说多对的点把人家绿南下是。绿南下的绿Geshe是啊，你个吧？No.
So I think I didn't quite get that, but now I see what Khensur is saying. So when we talk about the Lunam, so like a presentation of the body of the text, what that means is that in this verse, you have what you call a statement of the subject matter of the rest of the text, which is more detailed. You also have an explanation, or it also refers to the purpose, the essential purpose, and the connection of the early ones to the later ones. No.
他的学家看的是呢，的这地方呢，学家对学家的看的定义的是呢，他的你说什么？实行台湾电子这边中实行下去的话，电这个那台湾电子这边中实行下，实行下这个电就对其他外星的习惯呢，送给的话，你送把的学家查掉。电就个那电这当对这个那下的其他外星的习惯是有的吧？电这个其他外星的习惯的马送给有送把人的什么？你送把的学家的。
So where it says Sishin Dombara, Sishin Domba.
Sishin Domba.
No. So where it says saw and taught, right? So in the last two words, it's been sort of like separated out in the English, but they come together in the Tibetan. Anyway, so saw and taught. Saw and taught because what was seen is dependent arising and what was taught is dependent arising. So in that way, when it says saw and taught, that indicates to us the topic of the subject matter, the topic. No.
的确，他听这个学家的对我们就根据那些年是那么多，根据对吧？对了，特殊前呢，两年前呢。所以个毛把那电就个那么下要我先把的搞把的。
Then as for the purpose, right? So we said the subject matter or topic. then purpose, essential purpose. So purpose, the purpose is understanding dependent arising through studying this text. So that understanding of dependent arising. No.
다 땡주고 남자 지다 하코바데 고바체 다 하코발라 때는 소소히 냠내 체니 다 냠내 먹고 체니 디바니가 빵투 빵소나 디바니가 빵투소나 디 닝거 단다 자와세아디 식지도와 자와세아 식디 닝거 땡겨 디미 말루바 빵베 자와 어디 닝거 땡바 고바 닝거
No. And so again then so subject, purpose, essential purpose. Essential purpose is that having understood about dependent origination and then engaging in practice, through practicing, you're practicing a lot, practicing very hard, practicing a lot, you will be able to free yourself of all obscurations. In other words, you'll be able to free yourself of the two obscurations. And so that's indicated by the word conqueror. So when it says conqueror, remember that means you've conquered, you've abandoned the two obscurations. So that word indicates the essential purpose of this text. No.
가서 땡주고 지다와신도 또바텔라 라레바르와 땡주고 남샤 지다와신도 냠레 체니 dimmi 말루바 빵바디 자 닝거르와 닝거디 딘데 닝거디 토바라 녀라 땡주고 남샤 지다와신도 셰고고요와 텔라 라레바인다 치망아마라 제와디 제와리 딘데는시 땡주고 남샤 지다와신도 또바 대양 땡주디 제자라 제자들라 마다나 하마고나 아니 땡주 남샤 지다와신 또야 매바인다 치마 ngamal라 아니 라레기요 바인다 디제와리.
And then the fourth point, the connection. So this is talking about how if we start with the conqueror, which means that state of having become completely free of all obscurations. So that depends upon having understood dependent arising, which is the purpose. So remember, the purpose was to understand dependent arising. So that final goal of the conqueror free of the two obscurations depends upon having understood, having realized, dependent arising correctly. And then your perfect understanding, correct understanding of the dependent arising comes from the topic. So if you don't know what the topic is, then you're not going to be able to get that kind of realization. And so that shows you the connection, between these various components, the subject matter, the purpose, and the essential purpose. No.
숑체 대가나시 땡주 되게 저자 거바 닝구 자와시 템베 류남샤야리스.
So we would say then this verse is at the same time a verse of homage, and also it presents it contains a presentation of the body of the text, which means it contains those 4 points: the subject matter, the purpose, the essential purpose, and then the connection. No.
다디 남주 지난주고 도나주는 남배 땡주 망쳐와라 쳐봐줘봐다 류남샤다 다 딘저기 카시 쳐봐줘봐다 류남샤 슝치기인게 양 카시라 쳐봐줘베 슝다 류남샤 슝카가인게 다 딘저기 이나야 땡주 망쳐와라 다 강갈라 딘저 요르다.
For those of you who have an interest, then you will see that most of the Buddhist treatises have these two things: the homage and the presentation of the body of the text. And sometimes this will be one and the same verse. Sometimes there'll be separate verses, but most of them have do have those two things. No.
Pena tejo ngondo jeyina ngondo jenge choba jube shung jikje. Ani ngondo jenge lui namsha ge shungdi shung kaga sik sosone yore. Chema namdi na ani chema namdi choba jube shungda lui namsha ge shungni sikje jikana yore. Oda dinde tenju zumge kansa sosoge ani meta dides jende song shaba dinde yores.
If you look at the Abhisamalamkara, then you'll see that there is one verse, which is the verse of homage, and then worship, offering of worship, anyway, homage, and then there's a separate verse which contains the body of the presentation of the body of the text. Whereas if you look at the Pramanavartika, then you'll see that they are in there's just the one verse serving both purposes, and so it varies according to the author. No. So the thing is that just like the Pramanavartika, this text also has the verse of worship and the body of the text, the presentation of the body of the text in one verse.
Oh, that's CJ Tamoja. That's CJ Niva Dilma Sugarwa. CJ Niva di Jiden Guba Chinipa, T Zawa Marite, Kanshe Tove Tetoba, Tenji Chaba Chuma Songs or did it.
No. Now let's go on to the next verse, verse 2. So it says, whatever degenerations there are in the world, the root of all these is ignorance. You taught that it is dependent origination, the seeing of which will undo this ignorance. No.
Tatia Sik Tambo de Jiden Guba Chini Bas, Jiden Sadi, Tangaranzo, Sunda Tela, Tusungo, Tapan Jidendi, Maranzo, Sachin Yelena Pumbongatisha. Jiden de la Sachin Yelena Pumbongasha.
Now, when it says, it's funny really with this anyway, but anyway, when the word here, which is translated as world, in Tibetan it's jiten, so literally the perishing basis, something like that, perishing basis. What that actually refers to is our contaminated, appropriated aggregates. No.
Ta jiden de la Nilenji Pumbonga Shani, Guba Chini Bas, Guba Sayati, Dungegi Mingri. Dungegi
Mingri. Then it says, so that's, take that as the meaning of the world, when it says the world there. Then when it says degenerations, so that's actually just another word for suffering. No, no.
Guba Sina Dungeche, and Dungen Tela, Kiwe Dungen, Nave Dunge, Chive Dunge, Kirana Chigi, Kiawata, Gawata, Nawata, Chive Dunge, or Guba, then the Kirana Chigi Dunge, Chinibas, Kari in the Yangs.
So when it says degenerations, which is another name for suffering, so the suffering refers to the suffering of birth, the suffering of aging, the suffering of sickness, and the suffering of death. So whatever, degenerations and things like whatever suffering there is of birth, aging, sickness, and death. No.
Today, Aranzo Nilenji Pumbo di Chitela Shani, Tig Tinga Dunge, Toma Gave Dunge, and Tene Gave Dunge, and Tama Nave Dunge, and Tama Chive Dunge, Digi Kanga, and Yonseg Tawata with Sudes and T Tawa Marites, Maribari is Odisura.
Okay, so again, remembering that when it says world there, that's talking about our contaminated, appropriated aggregates. And so then, the suffering that we experience, that I've mentioned, birth, aging, sickness, and death. What's the root cause of all that? Ignorance. So that's what's meant by that second verse. The root of all these is ignorance. The root of all that suffering is ignorance. No.
어디 뒤자와 말이 바리 스타디 자와 인단디 가르스나 나란조 녀렌지 풍부디 규메바 깨메바 때문에 중반 말이스 봐 나란조 녀렌지 풍부디 규라 때문에 중반 규대야 나 딱겨왕아 말 레사베 레 때문에 중샤바 제데스 레디기 자와디 이는 말이 바 차대어리스 어디 숨어
Now, how is it the root? So roughly how it works is that we have our appropriated aggregates. So these are not without causes and without conditions. They have causes. There is a cause for these appropriated aggregates, and the cause is karma. And the root of that karma, root cause of that karma is ignorance.
어디지 와 다 진대에 나라도 동에 변화 가자나라 참아도 탐지 요새 동에지 자와디 마리바 차대요리 이 마리바디 가래 하거나 마리바 독이래스나 강시 통에 대도바스 와 전다 내주 컨디지 시에서나 아니 마리바도 도토그래스나 아니 땡지 잡아주면 남샤도 통나 아니 마리바도 도토그래스 디스워리 강시 통에 대도바
No. No, Larry. Okay, so it's saying all suffering, every kind of suffering we have, all of our problems are derived from suffering, ignorance. So that's their root. Then what it says is, you taught that it is dependent origination, right? So if we ask, well, what is it? What do we need to know in order to stop that ignorance? And Gyümé says that what we need to know is dependent arising. No.
그래서 강시 토에 대도가 땡지 잡아 줘서 다 땡주고 대권은 되게 봐도 되게 송바리스 봐 어디 송바리.
No. And so what he's saying here is that the Buddha taught that in order to stop that ignorance, what you need to understand is dependent origination. No.
어따디 측되게 다양 전다수 님부터 시작하이나 나랑도 장물링 디나라 강에다 동해 망고 쉬우지요. 예스와 지대 고바치니 지대디 니렌지 풍부를 샤단 지단 조 니렌지 풍부 요서의 수레스나 도와리 주고 심지 탐절이 니렌지 풍부 요었다. 디기야 지대 도와리 주로 샤바이네 디겨래. 간다로 조 다와디 니렌지 풍부가들이. 봐. 다 니렌지 풍부가 랑겐게 도와리 주고 심지 탐절라 아니 동해 망고 쉬우지요. 예스. 봐. 동해 망고 쉬우지요. 예스. 디제데 동해 요새 자와디 아니 술로 토바르잖아. 자와드 마리발로 토바리스. 마리베 텐디 미시바스고. 미시베 몽바스고. 딜로 토바리스. 어디스고.
So the essence of what I'm trying to tell you, in other words, the essence of this verse is that everybody in the whole world has so much suffering. So remember what I said when it's where you see the word world. Mainly that does refer to the appropriated aggregates. Then who is it that has those aggregates? It's the various, the 6 classes of sentient beings, the 6 types of sentient beings. So you can think of the world as being the 6 types of sentient being, but mainly it refers to the appropriated aggregates. And so when you have those appropriated aggregates, then you have so much suffering. So similarly, we can say those 6 types of sentient beings, they have so much suffering. And the root cause of all of that suffering
is ignorance, where ignorance means not knowing. No.
다 말해봤지. 다 든지게 에너지 동해 요새 자야 마리바디 아니 도야 탑시라 디 도버 잡아라 먼저 땡제다 땡중은 남샤 야고 셰고요. 그래서 땡제다 땡중은 남샤 셰바이나 와 디 통바이나 아니 거기 자와 마리바디 도발라 펜통이요. 그래서
And the method to stop that ignorance is a good understanding of dependent origination. So in other words, if you have a good understanding of dependent origination, that's going to be very helpful to you in stopping, overcoming that ignorance. No. Because that's the case, that's why the Buddha taught about dependent arising, dependent origination. No. This verse, verse 2, also, from this we can also understand about the Four Noble Truths. No.
The
first line, which says, whatever degenerations there are in the world, that's talking about the truth of suffering. No. And then when it says the root of all these is ignorance, so that's talking about the truth of the origin, because ignorance is the truth of origin, it is the origin of suffering. No. No. Then, we see the order changing in the English compared with the Tibetan. So you have to skip to to where it says the seeing of which will undo this ignorance. So this is talking about the truth of the truth of cessation, because it's the seeing of which, that means by seeing dependent origination by so when it says seeing of which, the seeing of which, so that's talking about the truth of the path, because it's talking about having a direct insight into dependent origination. And then it says, when it says will undo this ignorance, that's the truth of the truth of origination, because what that's saying is, so through the truth of the path, then you will be able to stop, you'll be able to bring the ignorance to, you'll be able to cease this ignorance. So that's the truth of the cessation, truth of cessation. No.
That is in the Sigeti, Dabashi Sungu was, Dabashi water to chick sunguris. That didn't never chimbuchiri, and Tumbachum then the one part of a San Jenny, Zamuluna, Chur somebody, Chur Toma Kar somebody, Deshi Namshat somebody, is what I'm saying.
The
Dabashi Namshat.
Didn't go with Ginipa, Denche, days are married. Kunjundamba. And she home where Lamdenche.
Tedoba Sidu, Gode.
Godendiche. No.
What the machine of Jatus.
No, Yeah, anyway, so that's right then. The first line, whatever degenerations are in the world, that's the truth of suffering. The root of all these ignorance, truth of the origin. Then by seeing that, that's the truth of the path. That will cease, or will undo, anyway, it says in English, but anyway, that will stop, that will be undone. That's the truth of the origin. So anyway, then to carry on, the Buddha came into the world, evidently, and the very first thing that he taught was the truth of suffering, right? No.
어두서리 디인지 삼바 tomba chumden degi tanda di shu sai ba
No.
ro zamulun de pen tomar soya de che soya de dambashi namsha to soma jezang azu denshi neju jodan di azu yago xie de kechen boris ba.
So the first thing that he taught about was these four noble truths, and because that's the first thing that he taught, the very first thing he taught when he came into the world and started teaching. So this is really very important for us to understand. No.
디인자 다 당다 마란주 장불링이 나 강에 시네미도 동에 시네미 대다 탐제 용사디 자와 저버디 주 아마디 마리바지스 디송바라바 다 마리바파 세야 탑시라 아니 간드스 치고레스나 아니 로와 티모데지 마리비 티모 다 마리바스네 티모데지 샤데어리 디 인파 세와라 남병어 좀 묘람 잡아다 로와 아니 지럽 쉬우바다 뒤치고 그 핑기요 말이스 로와 마리바 세와 티모데지 마리바데 세와데 세야 탑시라 대다 아니 진당 온게 이게 로직 랑기 줄이야 깨버리체 아니 와 대다 진당 온게 이게 로 데메토 벨로데 디랑기 줄라 깨버리체니 엔 디기 티모데지라 파 네버체니 아니 림베 콤바이나 아니 그게 자완에 빵토야다 다 딘데 유요레스 딘데기 돈에 아니 냠내체는 좋고요레스.
And so all of the troubles of the world, the problems, difficulties of the world, all the suffering in the world, the main cause of all of that. Maybe it works in English, the mother of all causes of that. Anyway, the main cause of all that is ignorance. And so what is it that we need to do in order to put a stop to that ignorance? So ignorance, is also referred to as timu tenzin, so like true grasping ignorance or true grasping bewilderment. So how are we going to put a stop to that? So praying for it to come to an end, and beseeching blessings for it to come to an end. This is not enough. What we need is to develop in our own continuums the mind which engages in the same object as ignorance, but in exactly the opposite way. So it kind of like meets it head on. So that kind of understanding, in other words, the realization of emptiness, that kind of realization, that kind of understanding will, first of all, it will start to harm and undermine that ignorance, and eventually it will completely eliminate it. No.
What did it? Tinza Tanda Zawa Mariba Dobala, Tenju and Namshat Sheko Yorwa, Kandara Dame in a Digitu, Tenjus in a Digitu, and Demes in a Digitu. Tindrig Tawa Chijamalova Chilang Yaba Tempo Sinesuna, and it take Maribalan Netugu is
Dame
Tobel. Tenjus in a degree, dames in a degree, demes in a degree, or Tindrig, you Tindrechel and Yaba, Tempo Sinesuna, Tig in it, Tawa Mariba de la Nene, Mariba the Pam to is.
So this understanding, whether we talk about whether we refer to it as the understanding of selflessness, the understanding of dependent arising, the understanding of non-true existence, when you've gained a real certainty about that, then you're going to be able to eventually completely eliminated. And of course, how it starts off is, you start to harm it, then you completely harm it by eliminating it. No.
어두스리 디인다 먼저 로직을 뇌단티 또 로직을 뇌단티 로친지 말로바지 로친지 로직라 아니 뇌행 로친지 말로바지 고고요다 르르라 뇌단죠봐 로직을 뇌단 지당 아주 르르 뇌스는 르르야 아니 pen 자과슈와다 직접은 르르 뇌고요봐 디 뇌단데 말이 단다 아주 로직을 로텔라 뇌단데 로친지 로직이 바 뇌발라 로친지 말로바 제랑이 줄라 깨네 디 친지 말로가 로테기 로친지 로텔라 뇌바 제네 디 따완의 방과야게 도단 데리스 와
No. So here we're talking about one mind harming another mind. So the way that one mind can harm another mind is when you have one mind which is mistaken, that would be harmed by another mind which is unmistaken. So it's not like, if you want to, if somebody hits you with a stick, then that harms your body. It's not like that, the way is by, incorrect understanding is harmed by correct understanding. No.
어디인자 가르쳐 그랬다. 단다디 시제되게 담바시 오트 제바스님도 디날 담바시 땡기 요리스 단다님고 어디시요이로.
So anyway, essentially then this verse talks about the Four Noble Truths. Verse 2. No.
다 디와데 시제 숨바들 말 나게다라와.
No. So I'll move on to verse 3.
대절로다 담바이 땡지 저버 추면 남제 주지 땜베 내년도 제대로 군도 주면 줄수.
So it says, so how can an intelligent person not comprehend that this path of dependent origination is the essential point of your teaching?
다디 시제 디게 가르쳐 것도스나 대절로다 담바이스와 다 로다 담바스는 로 소르네바 봐 남주도 담바 봐 다게 다 덤베게 덴제게 남샤 숭바텔라 제바첸 덴제 남샤 숭여로 봐 아니 딜라 아니 소소게 아니 출신도 보게 제바첸이 덴지 잡아주 주팅이 와 대절로다 담바이 덴지 잡아주 람스 덴제게 도벨 남샤스님은 덴제 도벨 람디 아니 그게 또 좀 된데 계란게 댐베게 산제게 댐베게 내가 침부지르샤 아세고 왔다 주지 댐베 내니도 그래서
No. So there it says, so how can an intelligent person not comprehend this path? Okay, so intelligent person, this is talking about somebody who's in their right mind, I think is one way we could put it. Another way would be an intelligent person. So in fact, which is exactly what it says, right? So actually, you see, the thing is, in the Tibetan it says someone with a mind. What it means is an intelligent person. So that's, you already see that in the English. So how could an intelligent person not understand that this path of dependent origination, this theory of dependent origination, in other words, somebody who's got the intelligence that enables them to really investigate and analyze, such a person, why would they not see that this is a really very, very important aspect of the Buddha's teachings? No.
그래서 제대로 군도 취미 줄었다. 강다르 남주도 덴베 남주도 덴베 강 로다 덴 남주고 로다 덴베 강사기 동반이 되 신지 말로와 또베 람 가소래 또베 람스네미도 덴델 또베 로티 엔 산제 또 쯤된 되게 덴베게 내가 타두들이스 와 내가 간다 땡지가 남샤 지다와 신도 시바디 산제 좀데 되게 땡베 내가 타두들이스 아니 디 땡지가 남샤 송발라 땡 아니 아주 콘도 추밤 다 콘도 추가 주거리스 콘도 추바 미주디 또바 주로스 디송도 와 콘도 추거리스 남주제게 다 보게 딱제 잡아이나 디 투거리스 와
So what it's saying is that an intelligent person, if they really, seriously investigate and analyze this teaching and get, a good understanding, a correct understanding themselves, they're going to see that such a person would see that this idea, this teaching about dependent arising, really is amongst all of the essential points of the Buddha's teachings, like the ultimate, the really, the main one, the ultimate of the essential points. No.
Oh, this chene, that suggests any Khensur, Tachiega, Dingama suggests Maribegi, Maribati, Tuni Tobala, and Maribat say Tugris, this Somarwa. Tuni Tobala then Mariba said to is. Any Tuni Toya Tuni Tobadi, a Sanje Chumden Digi, and Dembegi, Nagat Tatu is or this Sumata.
So what this is saying is, taking, also taking into account the previous point that that ignorance is removed through understanding, through understanding dependent arising. So what you can understand from this is that the realization of dependent arising, the understanding of dependent arising, is like really the most important thing that you can understand from the Buddha's teachings.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Sumba de Cherwa. That's Shiva de la. This one.
No.
Shiva de la. Tada Lana Gonjula. Tebe Goni Sushigi. Tene Joa Sumbali, Waterjo, Chishi Nye Satiri.
No. So we go on to verse 4. It says, this being so, who will find, O Savior, a more wonderful way to praise you than to praise you for having taught this origination through dependence? No.
That's CJD Karsungu or Sena. Tombala Tobadi. Gombo Chelas. Gombo Chela and Toba Pudan, Toba Choba Jovas name. Toba Pudandi or Chidan Go Mamboyoris. Go Mamboyori. Kuyuguna Toba Pudan Yori, Sungo Guna Toba Pudan Yori, Tuji and Deguni, Toba Pudan Go Mamboyoris. You're the tin Nane, so the Samuteju Subacone, Junda de la Tobati, and Tebego Meduchuashis, or this one. Tebegoni Sushi, Tene Joa Sumbali, Water Jovachin. Junda de la Toba Pudan Gomeda Mamboyoris. You're the Yine, Jumden de Toba Pudan, Kirang Tendrig Che Samushi Sunshas. Tendrig Che Samushi Sumbecone, Kirana, Tendrig Che Shingadus, this Shingadus Toba Puadi, the Degone, Toba Puadi, Toba Shele, Choduba, yes, or this one.
No. So, so it's saying that here that there are so many different ways of worshipping the Buddha, or if you like, offering praise to the Buddha. One can praise the Buddha in terms of the qualities of the body, or of the speech, or of the mind. But really, the most amazing way to offer praise to the Buddha is for his having taught dependent arising. No.
Or the Tenji Tinzan Tenji Ngave Gone. Tenji Ngave Gone, Tombala, Tobati, 덤발을 떼봐 표현 고 망본은 초도 줘봐 매도 줘봐 있을 거.
Yeah, so praise, offering praise to the Buddha for having taught dependent arising amongst all the different ways of offering praise is it's like the supreme, it's like the best, the most amazing way to offer praise. No.
나디 덤발 뒤주고 떼단죠라 덤발 떼단디 떼쟁아고 떼바디 떼바 약슈리 사게 딱게 디시고.
So it's saying that the praising the Buddha for having taught dependent arising is the best way to offer praise.
다 지정아바된다, 봐.
Then verse 5.
강강절라라려봐. 대대랑시 지도시. 숭바 딜레 양체베 레돔츠니 지시유에서 될.
Whatsoever depends on conditions, that is devoid of intrinsic existence. What excellent instruction can there be more amazing than this proclamation? No.
다디 가르송고도스나 강간견라라라봐. 다 지나게 오보 간제지나야 간다 칸이나야. 니 견라라려봐다. 니 견라라라려봐 준제도 전에 니 라왕고네 마줘봐. 강간견라라려봐 대대랑신 기도시. 오보 간다 칸이나야 견라라려봐리스. 봐. 유대 견라라려봐리스. 유대 견라라려봐 대다티 니 랑신기 마줘봐리스. 어디서 거.
No. What this is saying is that all outer and inner phenomena depend upon conditions. And for this reason, they don't exist by their own nature. And in other words, they don't exist independently. No.
어쨌든 대대로시 제도 시 송바딜레스다 니 송겐데 소리는 또바 좀 된대로 와 또바 좀 된대기 니 지나가 오보 간제지나야 유대 견라라려바테 라려바테 랑신게 마줘바리 송바라와 송바디 소와다 송바디 치니 매도 좋았으면도 원사왔으면 양천바리스 봐 레돔 춘이 지시였어 아니 진짜게 아니 매도 좋았다 원사와다 양천백이 아니 레버드베 수지시유대 여바 말이야 다 간다 어디서 왔다.
Now, so he's quoting, isn't he? So who's he quoting? He's quoting the Buddha as having taught that whatsoever depends on conditions is devoid of intrinsic existence. So the Buddha taught that all outer and inner phenomena come into being through depending upon causes and conditions, and therefore do not exist by their own nature. So Gyümé is saying, this teaching is just so amazing. This teaching is just completely astonishing. There's nothing more amazing than this teaching. There's nothing more astonishing than that teaching. No.
와, 다 디게 제가 가서 그래. 진짜기 줌젤라 때네. 와. 텐디인비 줌젤라 때네. 아니 라시지 마주가 송바와. 텐디인비 줌젤라 때네. 라시지 마주가 송게게 덤바 될라. 아니 다 간다. 가서 그래. 다 대바다. 와 대바다. 아니 보게 녀바 땜발 신도 그바다 땜발 신도 그게게 대바다 이지게 바리스 지기리스 텐디인비 준젤라 때니 라시지 동발 송바인수더니 텐디 송경게 땜바 될라 아니 대바다 이시 두스 지기리스 와.
And then, so what Gyümé is saying is that the fact is that depending upon the understanding dependent arising, one can understand that things do not exist by their own nature and don't exist, in other words, don't exist independently. So what he's saying is when you understand that, yeah, when you understand that, then you're going to experience a great deal of faith and belief in the Buddha who taught that. No.
어떠세요? 다 되는 직제 당하고 축복이 뭐이다. 봐.
No.
강도 수의 집안은 tanzi chiwa teje ba tini kela toba yi tawa ma lu jebe kos.
So then verse 6, by grasping at it, the childish strengthen bondage to extreme views. For the wise, this very fact is the doorway to cut free from the net of elaborations. No.
다 강도 수의 집안남 시주삼바 집어 수수 집어 미시베 몽바 시고 강도 수의 집어 다 강당야 강사가 다도 주바다 취지 다도 주바 진경기 이니 집어 다 동반이 내주 미시베 몽바 주고 예스 봐 집어는 강도 수의 집어는 아니 tanzi chiwa tenche ba pena tanzingi chiwa de soresan dadu to ba dadu to ba zimbe zimbati page zimbati page shukcher tanya di rangshi jutube junze de chigi waris ba rangshi jutube junze de chene zibashu cher tangi yoris ba kandar yana rangshi jubasne tenne juwe junzeji rangshi jutube rangshi jutube zimba shukcher tangi yoris 미신게 속에 와. 네 개발 남라 아니 고도지. 때네 주에 주제지 랑시지 마주 봤다기요. is what is so.
What this is saying is that what to say, the child is this that means people who don't know, the ignorant people who don't know. For them, the idea of things, the thought that things are dependent origination, in other words, they exist through depending, that strengthens their their bondage to extreme views. In other words, their grasping at itself is like bolstered up by that, it's strengthened by that. Whereas for the wise, exactly the opposite happens. For them, the understanding of dependent arising helps them to overcome any sense of, any kind of grasping at itself. No.
Yana tsikdelarwa kando suwe chiba sayadi tumda oma la jani. Ngobor mawa, demba duwa. Kelenge nguya mawa sinemido tumzul ma jani. Tumda ome ki demba duwe junzela gyude jela rale bada sungu yoris. Wa di ini tini kelas, tini keba umapala. Ini gyude jela rale bada tigi demba maduwe ini junzel sungu yoris. Demba maduwe junzel de sune ini tanziji chiwa maluba, chawa maluba ini jebe gole ya ini kelang yoris odi sungu.
No. There's another way of understanding that. If you think of the childish as referring to the proponents of the lower Buddhist tenets, tenets, the realists. In other words, not the Madhyamikas, the other ones besides the Madhyamikas. So for them, they have this idea that things are truly existent, and they say they're truly existent because they arise in dependence on other factors, or they depend upon other factors. Whereas for the Madhyamikas, they would say that things are not truly existent because of the fact that they're dependent. No.
What do you say? That Tendrig Namshati met to Chuar is Tendrig Namshati, any that Shenda Metawa is that the Tendrig Junze to Chene, any Rangshima to Gyori, Tendrig Junze to Chene, any Rangshi Chuba Zimbe Zimbasin, Zimbati Chuma de Chugio is what is one.
So this is talking about what an extraordinary thing this teaching on dependent arising is, because from one way of looking at it, by the reasoning of dependent arising, you can understand that things don't exist independently. And also through depending upon the understanding of dependent arising, then you're able to cut through the what does it say? Cut through the net of elaborations of grasping at true existence. No.
시작이 당 오살께베 내리스 오살께베 내리스 어디 숨겨래 거기 갈수래 신다기 주드 깰 때의 중화디 라시지 주베 줌제를 거야디 그거요 와스 이 우마베기 주드 깰 때의 중화디 라시지 마주베 주치를 거야디 시작이 오살체버리스 어디 숨겨래.
So he's saying that it's really amazing that actually, those others, the other proponents of the Buddhist tenets, they think that because it's a dependent origination, therefore it has to, exist from its own side by its own nature. Whereas the Madhyamikas, for them, it's the complete opposite. They say, oh yeah, actually, things are dependent origination, and that means that they're not true. They're not true existence. They don't exist from their own side. No.
다드네 직접 주고 뒷받침이 된디 현대 마토에 덤바 시작 진이데 와제라는 생각이 어디지않아 점주직.
No. Then he says, since this teaching is not seen elsewhere, you alone are the teacher. Like calling a fox a lion, for a Titika it would be a word of flattery. No.
다디 가르쳐서나 사모 텐중이 인체 디다보 텐중이 체 디다보디 아니 점바 시행기 잠불린 디나라 점바 마보 시다요. 와 잠불린 디나라 점바 마보 시다요 때 텐중이 사모 텐중이 체 디다보디 점바 신다 관계야 소요 바디스. 와 마소바이 중심도 마통인다 아니 그 점배나네 그나 점바 신다 men자와 tombalana me ba shiri shas odiso tendi shendo matove tomba shija chini de kiran tomba ngune re shas wa dambulin dinal tomba mango yore te chidan tomba kange ge range lapchi chungyu is lapchi chungyu che sungyu yinaya tomba chumde de kirangi sungdan de tenji imbi jumzen do chene tene chuwe jumzen do chene ani pa ngotolo ma lapchi chundan de So
this is what this is saying is that there have been so many teachers in the world, and of course they had their own ideas that they taught, but the Buddha was the only one, or has been the only one, that taught everything on the basis of dependent origination, and this is really what makes him stand out amongst all of the other teachers. He's the real teacher for teaching this. No.
What the ticket in the just tomba shen digedi tomba ming taba some remando today ta kandar tenju namsha chamon tisnem tenju namsha chido digedi sungmi dos wa tomba ming taba tam remando and tenju namsha dinje tone and ma lapcha kya dos wa.
So he's saying that they're called teachers, but none of them taught this very profound and subtle idea of dependent origination. No.
That deal with the Tsiganese. Emma Dumba, Emma Macho, Emma Gunsa, Tigneted.
No. So let's look at let's look at the next two lines, the first two lines of verse 8, where it says, wondrous teacher, wondrous refuge, wondrous speaker, wondrous savior.
Karesina, Kira, Tomba Jimde, Kira, Tabelam, Chinji Maloba, Dungus, Tabelam, Chinji Maloba, Tombari Shas, MO Dumba, Kiran Tabelum, Chijimalova, Dungi Dumbarisha, as teacher. MO jobs to do Kiran Siva the Shiva, Jiba Tamjil, Jobers, Jablana Mavatrishas. Oh, any MO Dumba, MO Machos, Kiran, any Movi Nelu, Chidawash in the Sumbekone, any Dujanama, Dingi doors. Didn't more damnable. More damnable, Shas. Listen, doing Yam Tabula, kept the Gunda Resatia, Kiran, yes, in the Kiran, Emma Macho, Emma girls, what to say.
Yeah, so when it says wondrous teacher, so you're a wonderful teacher because of having taught the path that leads to liberation. You're a wonderful refuge because you protect from the fears of existence, samsaric existence and peace, the peace of personal liberation. Then you're a wonderful teacher because of having taught. Everything that you taught was in accordance with how things really are. And then you're a wondrous savior because you're the one that everybody can look to and look to with hope. No.
What is so? That did Tombalia, Turban, Takira, Tombalana Meva, Gablana Meva, Macho Lana Meva, Gurlana Meva. What that did it? Kirangi, Susu need to the Chidawash in the Susu Chazan Hakoni in Shella Tomba. That did it in the Tombalana Meva. Any under Gablana Meva Sadi and Rani Koya Dungan to the Chidawash in the Kene and did a tub Dijala Tomba Java Inza and Gablana Meva. What that destiny Tombalaya Toba.
So this is a praise to the Buddha, saying that the Buddha is a I can't remember what the term was anyway, peerless anyway, and there's another word that the translator used in a previous verse anyway. So a peerless teacher, peerless refuge, peerless speaker, and peerless savior. So praising the Buddha because for having taught on the basis of his own personal understanding, being a refuge because of understanding how to be free of suffering and so forth, and teaching what he understood to others. No.
That digit need the logic, Nishari, Danger Teju lesson, Tombatella, Tacha, sing it.
No. Then I'll just finish off with these last two lines. I pay homage to that teacher who taught well dependent origination.
That danger Teju lesson be danger in Chinji Maloba Tomba, Dijalama Tomba in the Tomba Tella, and Dagi, Ning Tabani, Wasaratan, Tabal Hopper Peshi, Tomba de Shabla Chat was that kind of danger Chinji Maloba Ma Rangi Shella Tomba, Shella Tungi Tomba Tella, any Yang Tabata Haba Peshi, Tabap. Was the Tabal Haba Peshi, the dead Tomatel and chat also this.
And so here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, you from your side, you taught about dependent arising unmistakenly. And because of this, then really from my side, from my heart, I would like to express my amazement. I feel this extraordinary feeling of amazement and faith in you, and with that kind of faith and amazement, I pay homage to you. No.
What is that? The wanted to sick there, Shani, and that deeper Kamachu Jones, Kiran the Tiwatilla, that the new Sheva Dina and Kiran, several much about the Yuna.
Okay, so I'll stop there, and then we have 10 or 15 minutes left. And so in the time that's left, maybe if you have questions, maybe there was something that I said that was unclear. So please go ahead and ask. I think, Michael, you're going to be taking care of that.
Yeah, we have one person with the raised hand. If they'd like to chime in, unmute themselves, and anybody else, if they'd like, they can put their questions in the chat. Either way.
Okay, so Lobsang is not only waving his hand, he's got his thumb up. It's a good sign. So question, please. You need to unmute. If you haven't unmuted, we can't hear you.
Steve, I don't think there is a question. I think there is something. It could be an accident, I think.
네, 어디 가서
Yeah.
쌈들래. 그런데 저요 말에 그런데 딘데치기도. 쌈들 아이베 이와. 디오민도. No, are there any questions in the chat or otherwise? Anyway, sorry, Michael. Don't want to tread in your toes.
Yes, we have one in the chat. How is the word unexcel being used?
Oh, that lana meba said kandachi kogidula. Lana meba.
라나 메바스야디 코란에 학바 메바들라 라나 메바스고 나 또뭐 좀 된데래 학바 메바들라 라나 메바스
The way peerless is used here is anyway, what it means is there is nobody superior, therefore he's called peerless. No. Is that it?
남짓
No.
라나 메바스야도 식도 나 코란에 학바 메바들라 고고리 와 코란에 또뭐 좀 된데게 된데 사메 저 뒤절로 dombar 잡아 인자 딘데 뚱게 dom바디 dom바 좀 된데라 학바시 메바 인수다네 아니 dom발라나 메바스.
Yeah, so for these various reasons, for having taught dependent arising and so on, he's described as peerless. And peerless means, the general meaning of peerless is there is nobody superior. No. Anybody else? Anyway, Michael, sorry.
We have a raised hand. Lee has a raised hand.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Rinpoche, for your teaching, and thank you, Venerable Steve, for translating. I'm curious, in verse 6, where it says, by grasping at it, the child is strengthened bondage to extreme views. I don't quite get the correlation between that and how dependent origination is a cause for them to be grasping at extreme views.
Okay.
I'm a little confused about that.
No, great question. Yeah, okay, thank you. There's just indeed so we do the CG to the content that Kandu Sungwe Jibanam Tarzin Jingwa Denjiba. Kazandi have songs. Consulti Samuel Kandistangido, Benad go Denju in some Rangani Drubares, Rangitseni Drubares, Dendrubares, Karchin Sangidos.
와. 다 배나 좀더 오마 쓰면도 마란도라 아니 그게 랑신 주주버 준비 따와 랑신 주주버 준비 지마지어라 봐. 와. 당연히 배나 셈장바리 아니 지다마와리 도대바리 코나 쪽이 랑신 주주버 켈링기요. 와. 랑신 주주버 켈링비 좀진디 랑신 주주고도 와. 주텔라 때는 제부디 주고도 와. 때는 주에 준젤라 때는 아니 코랑시 주주버래. 랑원의 주고리스. 그래서 준제 디송이요.
No. 아니 랑안에 맞dum나?
랑원의 맞으나 매주고리스다. 랑원의 맞으나 그 여러 와스. 여리 디인자 랑원의 주고요. 랑원의 맞을 수도 있으면 직디기 랑시지 맞다 랑원의 맞을 주고 말스라비 아니 좀더 오마줄라 디 랑원의 맞으나 매바차도. 삼로 준제 삼로 땅다 데리.
The thing is, so if we think about the lower tenets, actually everybody below the the Prasangika, they think that that they have this, they do believe that things exist from their own side, So what they would say is, of course it exists from its own side. You know, you can see how, depending on this cause, this result happened. Well, therefore they must exist from their own side. And if you were to say, well, you know, why do you have to say they exist from their own side? Then they would say, well, if it doesn't exist from its own side, it means it can't exist at all. Everything has to exist from its own side. So the very fact that you have results arising from causes, that confirms for them that it exists from its own side. Because if it didn't exist from its own side, totally non-existent for them. No.
그러니까 아니 나랑 졸이나야 먼저 삼로 제바친데 삼로 땅바이나 나랑도 치료 공업인데 다 메토리 강바리 추리 가르 통바이나야 그 나랑도 왕실이야 통단지어 즉 그게 주드께 가나야 마대베 고원의 통단지어 와 통단天能시 수수 삼는나 아니 다가라 레 삼베 삼로죠 딜라 아니 아소레 랑신주 주벌 준비 진바스네 디그리 마리바스네 티무 덴지스네 디그리 마리바스네 디고 마리바스 되지 차대.
And actually, even in our own case, if we really, check up, if you really look carefully, you see that whatever external object appears to our senses, whether it's flowers, water, mountains, whatever, how they appear to us is as if they didn't depend upon causes and conditions at all. And it's not just that that's how they appear, we even believe in that appearance. And actually believing in that appearance, believing, in other words, that things are independent of cause and conditions and so forth as they appear, that itself is ignorance, and that is, grasping at true existence.
데뷔를 차시나 베나 신도를 차시나 베나 암지 부슈리 다가네 철로마리 전조그 소소소기 투모마이 비 주텔레 소소소 끼기요 바디 아주 시기요 있어. 소소용원에 디시드서 소소용원에 수주베게 능수치내기요 있어. 유소소용원에 주변 능수치기요 있어. 이 뒤준절라 때네 다 신도그리 데부탐제 랑을 투바리스 견 준제디 순거리스 유수술라 때네 데부수송원에 디주 디기 준젤라 때네 디제디 랑을 투바리스 제시되고리스.
So they explain then, like for example, you have various fruits like mango, apple, and so on. So these various fruits, they we know that they depend upon various causes and conditions, but how they appear is like they exist from their own side. So their explanation is that they do actually exist from their own side as they appear, because they come into existence through depending upon causes and conditions. No.
다디 오마베게 다 소소소원에 주소소라 때니 데부소소 주고 요바인자 랑시 좀 마주바리스. 다 준제디 빼티 오마베게 제시디 코돈이 순거. 제가 주소소라 때니 데부소소 끼기도 와스. 그게 주소소라 때니 데부소소 끼기 요바인자 디 준제라 때니 데부지 탐제 랑시 좀 마주바리 주의지 탐제 랑시 좀 마주바리스. 준제디 순거.
Then the Madhyamikas, the middle way philosophers, they say, well, their way of thinking is complete opposite. They say, well, you can see that because of this cause, this result happened. That means that that result doesn't exist independently of everything else. It doesn't exist from its own side. So, they use the same thing to come to the opposite conclusion.
그래서 주소소를 떼어봐인자 주소소를 떼밤 떼어봐인자 떼어봐 대가라는 게 그랑 수도 중원에 맞주봐 다 랑시지 맞주비 준절을 주고 있어. 랑시지 주면 떼먹어봐 차도 그래서 오마베 제시디게고.
So the way their reasoning goes is it depends. It relies upon something else. Therefore, it doesn't exist from its own side. if it did exist from its own side, it wouldn't need to depend upon anything else. It wouldn't be, rely upon anything else. No. So that's the difference. That's the difference. Okay. No.
Tene juwe junzen la tene rangshi ji majuba jodan de khadis imi tola yani ando simgi samlo tan cheba yina ani ko ngazo maso ne neju de ser doyala tende pendo yuris.
Anyway, for sure, if you invest some time and energy into investigating this, analyzing this, the connection between things being dependent, origination, dependent arisings or dependent originations, and not existing from their own side, the relationship, it will definitely get clearer and clearer.
Wow. Umabegi sungyu de sama che tamje rang shi je ma zhu ba ri dembar ma zhu ba ri sungyu wa sungyu ri di ji suya ge jumze zo di tenji jumze de ku ba ba de tenji imbe jumze la teni rang shi je ma zhu ba ri di sungyu ri da tenji imbe jumze de chen rang shi ma zhu ba suya ge jumze di jumze am rigwa di ani deme juve ge jupase neme do rangshi je matu ba ha koya ge rigben an yakshu ri suwa.
And so the main reason, in fact, that through which we can understand that things don't exist truly is dependent arising. So actually, the reasoning of dependent arising, like because it's dependent arising, like that. That's the supreme of reasons that we can use for understanding things don't exist truly. No. And that's why it is that the dependent origination is called the king of reasons. No.
What is it?
No. So
that is all.
No, let it. No.
Paging on the Tuzu Chizu Guata Simpson, only the Chua Menang of the Zamshan. The Chua Yuna, Gerando, and the Chua Dia, and the Pachimi, and do some more covered to the Juna, want to Jimin Tuzu Digola, near Tamu on the Chua Yuna, Chua Geshe Tuzu.
No, because the nomination, the Dumbo, the Petiche, and the Sane.
Genetic ya tandi tiri nganzu keje sheba dela keranzo samlo tan chiwa yona chudin jema sobe kala tangbo sanji chuzo ma da menje pu chiwa di tangbo ko dile ma nganzu deshi jakshan di.
Okay, so generally speaking, we're finishing at 8:30. Anyway, 9 o'clock in the morning where Rinpoche is. So, that means that our session has come to an end. If there are still questions, think about your questions. And if you still have those questions when we meet next time, so, we'll start off as usual with the refuge and bodhicitta, the mandala offering. And then before going into the text, we can look at your questions, or at least some of them. Okay?
Okay.
No. So thank you. So can we have the prayers up, please? Then also the DJB in the Dagi Genius of Gavadi, then it is no Dagi Genius Abe
Gawa, Denda, Joa, Gula, Kambe, Kevara Jizu, Losa, Debe, Nimuring,
Shores, Aji,
Joshim, Metal Drum, Dejan,
Yemba, Sange, Jindu, Dogu Namda Jingla, Chepa, Jo, Edam, Guru Rana Mandala, Dayami, Jambe Pao, Chita, Kembata, Gundu Sambo, Dean, Teda Gungi Jesu Dalo Gyawa Teda Tamje Raptu Ngo Tu Sun Shepe Gyaw Tamje Ki Ngo Kanla Chotu Ngapa Dagi Gewe Sawa Dikun Gyan Sampo Chuchu Rap Ngo Ki Kare Rawe Kore Shingande Pendante Wa Malu Jungwe Genese one dancing gazo yishabe site bad dengue chi. So good night, see you everybody, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Rinpoche.
much.
Thank you, Venerable Steve.